Hi everyone, and welcome to Market Audience and Social Research, SPSS, Workshop 7. I'm Kelly Koff, and in today's workshop, I'll show you how to test for associations using chi-squared analysis and cross-tabulation in SPSS. This is going to let us see if changes in one variable appears to be associated with changes in another variable. So this is a really important relationship to understand in market research. It's important for things like if a consumer's gender might be related to their price sensitivity or product preference or something like that. So this information can be really invaluable for contributing to the success of marketing campaigns because you know which consumers to actually target. The second thing that we're going to do today, though, is to test associations between variables using the calculations of a correlation of coefficient. So this measures the strength of the relationship between two variables. So our first question is on page 18 of your workbook. So this is to find out which news program would reach the probable patrons of the Hobbit's Choice restaurant most effectively. So we'll be using that data set again today. So we'll determine this by running a chi-squared analysis. And the second question that we'll look at today asks us to find if older or younger people want unusual desserts or unusual entrees at the Hobbit's Choice restaurant. So after we do the chi-squared analysis for question 1, we'll use the Bivariate correlations function to produce a Pearson's correlation to help us answer the second question. Okay, so let's get started. First of all, we need our Hobbit's data. So we'll just open SPSS, find our database and click open. Okay, and here's our data. So to find out which news program would reach the probable patrons of the Hobbit's Choice restaurant most effectively, first of all what we need to do is click Analyze up in the top bar here. Then go down to Descriptive Statistics and then go across until you find Cross Tabs. And then we're going to click on that one. So Analyze, Descriptive Statistics, Cross Tabs. That's going to open up our cross-tab dialog box. So this is where we can transfer those variables across. So we want to find the variable that says times new, which is this one just here. So we'll click on that one and we'll bring that across to the rows box just by clicking on that one. Then we'll find the HC patron variable. So that one's almost at the bottom here, just here. And we'll bring that across to the columns box. Okay, so the next thing we're just going to do is click on the cells button just over at the side here, the third button down. That's going to open up the crosstab cells display. We're just going to make sure that we've ticked observed, expected, rows and columns down under the percentages. We'll click total and then click continue. Okay, now before we hit OK, we first need to click on the statistics button, which is the second one here. That's going to open up our crosstab statistics. Then we're just going to click, make sure that chi-squared, that first one there, is ticked. Then we can click continue. Okay, and now we can hit OK and let SPSS do our analysis for us. Okay, so the first thing that SPSS gives us is the case processing summary. So this shows us that 400 people responded to the survey with N400 there, but 44 people failed to answer this question. So that gives us a data set of just 356 responses. That's people that responded to the question, which newscast do you watch most frequently? This is for the probable patrons of Hobbit's Choice. So now if we scroll down to our cross tab, of which newscast do you watch most frequently, have a look at the patrons that said yes versus the patrons that said no. And these are our options here. So for the 7 a.m. news, we have 5.5% of the probable patrons of the Hobbit's Choice. The noon news, there's nobody watching that one. The 6 p.m. news has 76.4% watching that. And then the 10 p.m. news has 18.2% watching that one. So that gives us a total of 100%. But we need to answer our question, which was which news program was the best one maybe to advertise in. So the one that our patrons are mostly watching there is the 6 p.m. news, with 76.4% watching that. Okay, so that was fairly easy. Now we can go and have a look at our second question. So we'll just come back to our data set. And remember, the second question asks us to find if older or younger people want unusual desserts and or unusual entrees at the Hobbar's Choice restaurant. So to do this, we're going to use bivariate correlation function, and this is going to produce a Pearson's correlation to help us answer the question. So this is really easy to do in SPSS. We just have to go up to Analyze, then go down to Correlate, just here, and then go across to Bivariate. So that's Analyze, Correlate, and across to Bivariate. Then click on that one. That's going to open up our Bivariate Correlations tab. So in the Variables box, we need to bring across those variables that we want to look at. So that's year born, age, unusual, and desserts. So I'll just click on year born, bring that one across, find age, bring that one across, find unusual, bring that one across, and then dessert, and bring that one across. Now before we hit OK, we just need to make sure in our correlation coefficients that Pearson's is ticked, just over here, and the test of significance is our two-tailed test. So just make sure that that button is also selected. This is because we're only looking to find if there is a relationship that exists between the patron's age and their menu preference, and we're not hypothesizing a directional relationship at this stage. Okay, so now those are ticks, we can just hit OK. That's going to calculate the correlations for us. So SPSS is just going to pop this underneath the analysis from question 1. So we just need to find that to interpret the results. So the first thing that you're going to notice in this table is that there's a perfect correlation between the variables in the rows and some in the columns. So that's for the same one. So year born and year born gives 1, age and age gives 1, prefer unusual entrees and prefer unusual. So this is a perfect correlation. So what I wanted to do to show you this was to actually show you the year born and the age. This also gives a perfect correlation here, so at 1, because the year that somebody is born is perfectly correlated with the age that they are. So that's what that would look like if there was a perfect correlation. So the correlation is going to give you a number between -1 and 1, so a positive 1 or a -1 with 0 in the middle there, and 0 being if no relationship existed. So positive numbers is that a positive relationship exists, and negative number is a negative relationship existing, and 0 is no relationship at all. So when we look at our column for age, we can see that there's a weak positive relationship between a person's age and whether or not they prefer unusual desserts. There's also a weak relationship between age and whether or not they prefer unusual entrees. So another thing just to draw your attention to here is just the little asterisks near the numbers. So if we go down here, we can see that those asterisks show that the correlation is significant at the 0.01 level in a two-tailed test. So this is our 99% confidence level. That's saying our alpha is 0.01, so our confidence level there is 99%. So a really good thing we can do in SPSS with this data is to do a graph to show up this visually. If we go to Graphs, and then down to Legacy Dialogues, then come across to Scatter Plots. So Scatter dot just down the bottom there, Graphs, Legacy Dialogues, Scatter dot. Click on that one. Now click the simple scatter and just hit Define. And then we're going to put our variables across. So we'll put unusual across to our y-axis. And then we'll just scroll down and find age, put that on our x-axis. Now we'll just hit OK. Scroll down and we have a graph here from SPSS. So this shows us the 4s and the 5s. Most likely to prefer the unusual entrees of 4 and 5s are those people between the ages of 50 and 60. So that's a very visual representation. So now we can just do that again with our other data. So graphs, legacy dialogues, down to scatter dot. Click on that one, simple scatter, define. Now instead of the prefer unusual entrees, we'll put that one back and we'll bring desserts across. And then we'll have a look at that one. So we'll keep age on our x-axis, click OK. And here we get some very similar results. So preferring unusual desserts, people between 50s and 60, they're the ones most likely to select a 4 or 5 as a response to that question. Okay, so what have we learned from today's analysis? So we've learned that there's a weak correlation between age and preference that's statistically significant at the 99% confidence interval. And today we've also learned that there's a strong correlation between age and those that prefer unusual entrees and unusual desserts, especially in that 50 to 60 years age bracket. We've also had a look at the analysis for what news program the patrons of the restaurant are most likely to watch. And that was 76.4% of the patrons most likely to watch the 6 p.m. news. So with all of this information, you could use this to make decisions about creating a new marketing campaign. So have a think about what you would recommend to the Hobbit's Choice restaurant if you were asked to make some recommendations about developing a new marketing strategy based on this data analysis. So for more information on how to interpret these results, just look at Chapter 5 in the SPSS Analysis Without Anguish textbook. And don't forget to save your output and upload it to the LMS. And until next week, take care.